Sometimes I wish we could go back to a time when things weren't so complicated.
Welcome to the complexity of toilet paper, the podcast that dives into the everyday moments where we overthink, hesitate, or just get stuck.
I'm overthinking. I'm overthinking.
Let's hear it for the toilet paper!
Through honest conversations, unexpected insights, and a whole lot of humor, your hosts Phyllis Martin, Mark Pollock, and Al Emmerich are here to help you roll with it and make your life a little less complicated. One conversation at a time.
That's right, dude. The beauty of this is its simplicity.
Speaking of which, it's time to enter the stall. Put the lid down, or not, depending. Get comfortable, and roll with it.
Oh, worry not, dear friend. It's really quite simple.
This is the complexity of toilet paper.
Help! I just need somebody. Help! I just need anybody. Help! The Beatles, ladies and gentlemen. As if you couldn't tell. Phil, Mark, did you hear that? Did that sound?
I heard it.
Yeah.
I got it.
Thank you. And for those of you that are Beatles fans that are also in the stall with us, I apologize. I do. Mm-hmm. I do. To John, Paul, Ringo, and
the other one?
The other guy?
George.
Good. Now I've forgotten the other
Now
Beatle.
a double apology. A double apology.
Well, there went the remaining 2.5 listeners. What is going on? I want to give you something. I want to give you a hard time, as I always do. I want to give you my love. I want to give you a hug. And I want to give you a great show. How do you feel right now?
I was thinking
Let's go with the great show.
Yeah, let's go with that. I like that. I mean, a hug's good too, but you know.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, mañana, midday, late night, whenever you happen to be drawing your eardrums into the scope of the stall. This is the complexity of toilet paper. If you're a first timer in the stall, roll up the toilet paper and get ready for a healthy discussion. If you've been with us forever and a day, God bless you. I hope you now have a lifetime supply of toilet paper, because my name is Al Emmerich.
And my name is Mark Pollock.
I'm still Phyllis Martin.
Yes, the distinctive pause, of course, there dramatically, but also she's severely distracted, probably reading emails right now. Just kidding. And this is the show that unpacks the complexities of life one conversation at a time. We don't rehearse anything, as if that's not obvious. We obviously, some of us take singing lessons. Phyllis does. Check out her story about that in one of our episodes. I don't. But the reason that we opened this conversation with that horrible sing and song version of Help is we have recently traversed the topic of giving. And on this team, this triad of stallmates, you've got Phyllis. Phyllis, what's your world in giving and nonprofits? Just give everybody the quick backstory.
Yeah, so I have both been a recipient of nonprofit organizations, and then I have worked in philanthropy for about 30-something years now in a variety of positions.
And I think it's important to note that you not only were involved with that, but you saw from the inside out, from the assessment standpoint, the data standpoint, what needs are in a community and how money flows and is distributed. Correct?
I have, and we'll talk more about not just the distribution of money, but that how needs in a community are typically, I know there are many types of organizations out there, but when we think about their people or animals, their lives, and we tend to think about this in terms of something else sometimes, I think. So eager to have that discussion. Data points are people or other life forms.
Yeah. Data is just data without a human being behind it. So, and it's so important because your perspective is not only as this host and co-host and partner and community-minded, passionate enthusiast, and a giver yourself, but also professionally, you've got years under the belt. Mark, what's your connection to philanthropy, giving, nonprofits, charity, that whole concept of world?
Honestly, not much. I've worked in the only kind of nonprofit world that I have worked in has been in higher education. So, but on a kind of a different side of the house. So, I'm excited about this conversation because, I do give, I do support nonprofits, but I'm very interested in this conversation and where it leads and the complexity of the kind of the back end of this. And we actually don't have a lot of work conversations, the three of us. And so I'm fascinated by this. I'm very excited to dive in.
And I've seen it from, I think, a unique vantage point. I've worked for nonprofits, yes, in marketing, communications, and fundraising, fund development, strategic planning. I have helped co-found, two nonprofits and led the startup of a nonprofit. But the majority of my time was actually as a spokesman, as a brand spokesman, carrying the message of nonprofits globally, actually. And so the voice of that organization to be a conduit for giving. So okay, now you got some background there. Here's kind of some foreground or background for this. First of all, this whole idea of charity, right? Well, first of all, if you think about it, last year alone, Americans gave nearly $600 billion to charitable causes. That's B with a billion, or billion with a B. About 2/3 of those dollars actually came not from foundations or corporations, but from people, individuals giving money, and asked the question, how can I help? Or maybe they didn't ask the question. Maybe they were told to help. Who knows? That's what we're going to unpack. So tonight, or today, whatever, we wanted to really talk about this concept of giving, because each of us has come across this idea of, well, why do we give? And there's so many different ways to give. And I think I even said once, Phyllis, I was like, yeah, it's almost like going to Netflix. It's like, you got all these choices. You can give here, you can give there. So what drives that? And so what are the expectations? Why do we give? And this is our opinion. I just want to remind you that we're not here to solve something. We're here to introduce layers of thought that hopefully lead to less complexity. Sometimes we muck that up pretty good and we actually get more complex. But our goal is to lay out some thoughts so that maybe you bring this back to your dinner table or breakfast or lunchroom and have a conversation that's less cumbersome. And obviously there's a lot of passion around this. So let's just kind of start this off, right? Like, okay. When we think about the idea of giving, I think the first question is, who gets my help? Right? And what's driving that? So Phil, I'm gonna start with you. Like, there's this whole head-heart tension around this idea of why people support one cause versus another. And so my first question is, why are some causes easier to support than others? And what's the relationship of the head and the heart to that? Or is it two separate items?
I don't know. I think people give in particular ways. They give to causes they care about, and that could be from a family experience. It could be something that happened to them. It could be they were served by an organization. It could be they know somebody who was served by an organization. It could be that somebody asked them, their friend asked them, and they said, yes, I will do it. There are a million reasons why people give. Most of them are personal in some form or fashion. And I can speak personally. I give because in my mind, there are causes that I care about, subsets of people that have different issues that I want to try to impact. Sometimes I give just because I think it's the right thing to do, and that's my personal judgment on myself. I think there's somebody in need, and I think it's the right thing to do. And I have no attachment necessarily to the outcome. But I see something, someone needs help. They've asked for help. I've stepped in to provide help.
Does this mean even for people who you might not have a connection to whatever it is that they're asking? They may just said, "Hey, will you help me? I'm riding on this thing, or I'm doing this thing. Would you support my whatever?"
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I have been this way since I was little. My husband would tell you I'm always giving money away. He usually says you're always giving our money away. But I really do believe inherently that I should share what I have. And if there are people in need, or people who, sometimes there are people who work with organizations or people doing work that I would never be able to do. I don't have it in me. It's not my experience. I don't want to, but it seems important and likely is important. So I'll support that. It doesn't mean I'm supporting it forever, but it means that I will do it. There are a lot of issues and causes and people that are in need of help. And I said this, like, I'm going to say it a little differently here. I can't remember. Mark, remember we were talking about animals in one of our sessions, and I was saying how Finn, my dog, is getting older, and I hope that, when I get to be his age, in people years, of course, that somebody will care about me and for me in the way that I care about him. And I feel that way about charity as well. I hope that if I were ever in need, somebody or some entity, some organization, some individual or set of individuals would step in to help me without judgment, without expecting anything in return, but because in their heart they thought it was the right thing to do. And I think in part that's where things get complex. It's actually, I think, on those who are giving where it gets complex, can get complex, and on their expectations.
And you're talking about not just money, you're talking about giving in general, whether it's your giving of your time or your resources,
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Absolutely. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to Phyllis talk about how she gives and what she does, and I just get the impression I just don't do enough, right? Like I'm really struggling with this conversation from the onset, and I don't know if other listeners can relate, but I feel like I give to the folks who are closest to me. Like I'm always trying to do for the kids, friends and whatnot. There's the giving at church, which is a thing, but it's not from a money perspective. And I keep trying to tell myself that, I'm helping those who are close to me. I try to mentor people and support where they're going. But when I think of organized nonprofit work, I do a really shitty job. Like there's not a nonprofit I'm associated with. There's not a place that I've spent time volunteering. I spend a lot of my time with, again, those people that I know and that I'm close with, but I don't go outside that circle. And so my complexity is, when I think about it, I typically get overwhelmed. And so I stay with those who come to me. So I don't know. I feel a bit inadequate in that space as far as, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough?
So I've been sitting here patiently, and thank you. I've learned from this show to just sit and listen before you jump in. But again, for anybody that doesn't know, we don't script the show. We kind of have an outline of the topics we want to talk about. So Mark just jumped into the later topic, but
oh, I'm sorry.
No.
You're good.
Well, that's why we don't
good.
script the show, because we let it flow. I didn't mean to say that rhyme. This time I didn't. Mark, that is part of the complexity, is that this part of this question is the complexity of giving. How you give is up to you. It is the act of unselfishness, the act of caring for others, the act. Dude, you give all the time. There's never been a time where you haven't been there for me. There hasn't been a time when you haven't offered incredible knowledge. Do I need to remind you of the drive back from Charleston, South Carolina, when,
Lord, have
forgive me,
mercy.
Jesus was sitting in the back seat, or Moses, depending, whatever. I mean, you give beautifully. You give to your children. You give to Valerie. You give to so many other people. So just because it's not tied to a 501c3 that's legally connected to the tax system does not mean one is not a giver. Right, Phil?
You can give.
Well, thank you for that.
I have a very close friend who says, who tells me frequently to carry my grain of sand. And if we each understood what our grains of sand were and just carried that one grain of sand, then we can see beautiful. She doesn't say this part, I am. She says carry a grain of sand. I'm saying if we all do that, then who knows like what's possible. And so, Mark, your grain of sand is just different than my grain of sand.
Well,
It doesn't make it better or worse. But it really does. We all come to it in our own ways. And sometimes I give to organizations and sometimes I give straight to people. It just depends.
So I told you all prior to the start of the show that I had a story that happened and I didn't know if it would come into play or not. And I'm going to go ahead and share it now because this is giving, right? But it's not charity in any sense of a structured charity. And I'll make it very quick, even though it was incredibly powerful. It is truly one of the most transformational moments I've ever had in my life. I had gone to a show for a dear friend's son-in-law who performed in Jacksonville. And ironically, the show was about church and evangelist and kind of rubbing against the grain. It was very, very caustic in many ways, but a great theatrical production. Really made you think about organized religion and stuff like that and God and what God wants of us. Afterwards, there's an after party at a local bar. And we go to the after party. I'm bellied up to the bar and I'm getting drinks for the folks. And this gentleman's next to me. I bump into him accidentally. I say, "Hey, I'm sorry." He's dressed to the nines. I tell him, "Man, those shreds are sweet, dude. You're looking good." He's like, turns around. He's got this full, thick mop of hair. And I said, "But I hate you." And he looks at me funnily. I said, "No, I hate you because you have more hair than I do. You got a better beard. You're better dressed." And we start joking. And my son calls me Dylan. And I talk to Dylan real quickly. And I hang up the phone. And I turn to him. "You got any kids?" And he's like, "Yeah, I got 2. He's like, "Well, I've got 3 kids." And I said, "We'll never underestimate the power of your child calling you." My 27-year-old just pinged me. And, it was just the greatest thing just to hear him say, "I love you, Dad," blah, blah, blah. And he proceeds to tell me that in a very caring way that he had just recently, 3 months ago, lost his 8-month-old son.
Oh, God.
And I looked at him and I didn't offer advice because you just can't in that moment. There's a number of different stories behind all that. And what do you say? And I have a number of friends who have lost their children, sadly, over the course of the last year. It's terrible. But I just look at him and I say, "Wow." And he says, "Yep." He says, "But the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. I just remember that the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away." And I looked at him and I said, "There's nothing I can say. So can I just hold you? Can I just give you a hug?" Now, mind you, this is a stranger in a bar in the middle of a packed bar while I'm in line ordering drinks. And that man and I held each other for probably a good minute and a half. And that continued throughout a conversation, which lasted about 15 minutes. In that moment, this man showed up for me and I showed up for him. And that's charity, quote unquote, right? It's not charity by the function, but it's giving. And I will carry that moment for the rest of my life. And so when we talk about the idea of giving, when we talk about the idea of the complexity of giving, yes, in its simplest form, that to me is what giving is about. It's the human exchange of need in the moment, but then sometimes it's just as transactional as giving money. And that to me is the perspective I have. There's that deep giving that you do, Mark, that we all do in our own way. That in its own form is giving. and there's no complexity there. You just love on a person or care about a person or another human being or another pet, and you do something kind for them, which has no price tag. It doesn't get a tax credit at the end of the year. But then there's other things where you actually do and support causes that are meaningful to you. And so do we give based on need or connection? Isn't that a question that we're asking here? And
It's one
in
of
that
the
moment,
questions. I mean, I think people give for both reasons. You give for need. Sometimes you give for connection. Sometimes you give transactionally. You do. None of them are bad.
what stops people from giving, Phil? I mean, you've seen the experience at both large philanthropic levels, and then you've also seen it in small. Like, what have you seen that stop? Like, what complexity gets in the way, or what confusion, whatever it is, gets in the way that stops the giving that you've experienced?
So I'd like to refine that question. Do you mean like if somebody's been giving to an organization or a cause for years and then suddenly they stop?
Yes, and.
Or do you mean what prevents somebody just from making the first gift? I have no idea. I mean, I don't know why somebody, if they're asked, there are many, many reasons why somebody wouldn't give to something, or even why they stop. I mean, financial reasons, their interests have changed. They feel like they've done their part for a particular organization. I mean, there are a million reasons why. I'm going to hone in on maybe a particular aspect of this, which is what I have seen I've seen a couple of things over the course of my lifetime when it comes to people giving, even just individually to organizations, or to individual people or to organizations. And one of them is they have an expectation that the person or the organization is going to then act in a particular way. So we all have our own sets of values and how we think people should be. And we all come to giving with our own set of, well, if I give to you, then. And therein lies the problem, because then I think you have to check yourself and say, why are you giving and what are your expectations of the gift? I have changed that over the course of my time when I give, because I cannot know somebody else's life. It is true until you have walked in somebody else's shoes. And none of us have the capability to do that. We have not done that. And yet a lot of times, many times, when you think about philanthropy or charity, there is an outsized expectation of what is possible. And I can say that to the... Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, no, please finish your thought.
I was just going to say, I can say that to the two of you because I reflect back on our first shows that we did together and the challenges and just horrors in some way of our childhood. And nobody could know that or put on any of us their projected outcome for who we should be, when we should be it, and what it would take for that to happen. There are a lot of ups and downs in all of our lives that brought us along, if not for the grace of God, I might add.
Thank you for that. I think that's a beautiful answer. I think my perspective on that, Al, is from a person who's never been involved like you and Phyllis have, and seeing the back end of a organized nonprofit fundraising organization. I've always struggled because I don't understand what happens with the gift, right? There's mom died of cancer. There's American Cancer Society. Dad died of a heart attack. There's American Heart Association. There's, we went to that event together for MS. Al, there's so many, housing and disease and so many areas that you can support people. But I guess I'm going to use the word ignorant in the sense of if I'm helping an individual person, I can see it, right? But when I just have the transactional piece and write a check and say, well, I'm just going to entrust that this money is going to go to the good, I don't understand it. And I think that's where the complexity comes into my life, because it brings up fear that, I'm not giving enough that would actually make much of a difference. Two, I don't really understand what happens with it or where it goes. And so I just overthink the whole thing. And so it just prevents me from doing something because I've overthought the whole damn thing.
Yeah. Mark, that's such a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to make sure, like, for our listeners, we're offering some suggestions. And if somebody were, even you, if you were to say that to me, and you just did, or if a listener was going to say that, then I would really encourage listeners to pick up the phone if you're inclined, right? If you're really curious about an organization or what happens, or if you're like on the edge of, I want to make a gift to, I'll just use the Cancer Society, but I really don't understand, pick up the phone and give them a call. I can assure you all organizations, I'm not even going to put a disclaimer on that, would be happy to talk about that, because in many ways they depend on, I just had this conversation with somebody, they depend on external people who are not close to it to hold up the mirror to what it is that they can't see. And I just had this conversation with somebody today. We've been working with a person. Her questions I have totally restructured some of the information that I hand out or share when I'm talking with somebody. Totally changed it. And that wouldn't have happened if she hadn't had the courage to ask so many questions, really, 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 really good questions. I'll also share this because there's a reality here. Why don't people give? I mean, Mark, it's something that you just said, Al, and you asked me the question. I mean, the world now knows that my mother died of ALS. I gave to the Muscular Dystrophy Association, which ALS is part of, for years, and I stopped giving. And I stopped giving because my mother has been dead for over 40 years. And there haven't been enough advances, in my opinion, in research. I don't even know if it's research. Nothing is different for people with ALS. Very, very little is different. And I got mad and I got frustrated, and I could no longer see myself or my story in how the Muscular Dystrophy Association was marketing itself and communicating. And I stopped. I just stopped. Now, if there was a family who was like had somebody who had ALS and they needed help, because I know how devastating financially that can be, or there was a way to help them, 1,000,000,000% I would do it. And my point is, it's all okay, right? It's all okay. People need help, and hopefully, I mean, Al, the statistic you gave, right? The majority of it is coming, the majority of philanthropic help, charity, is coming from people. Not to negate foundations or any other thing.
So, gosh, so much there. So let me first address the fresh point you just brought up, and then I want to go back to some knowledge, Mark, that would maybe help you and help folks that are in the stall with us. Also, there's giving. There's an expression in relationships. Relationships have seasons, and then you have seasons in your life, right? The same thing exists for philanthropy, community engagement. You have seasons where things are a higher priority. I can remember being very involved in youth sports nonprofits when I was coaching, because it was just relevant. It was very, very, very close. There's been other organizations that I've spent a short period of time, but the ones that I've dedicated a lot of time to, years, decades, sometimes they just kind of reach a point where it's like, hey, I've done everything I think I can do. I don't have unlimited financial resources. I don't have unlimited time resources. Where is my passion guiding me now? And part of that, now going back to what you asked, Mark, is nonprofits for the longest time, and I don't want to make this only a nonprofit, but nonprofit organizations for many, many, many years struggled with the story of where the money went. Some of that was because of legal challenges that were brought up to bad actors in the nonprofit space. Others were just the way that they operated, right? They're much better traditionally now. Part of that is legal. Part of it is just operational maturity. And now you can give in different ways. You can have dollars marked for certain ways that you want to give, to resources, to people, to services, so on and so forth. But But on the other side of it, there's also so much information out there that you can now research the organizations. But at the end of the day, Phyllis's point was right. There is a dual responsibility, I believe, between the donor, giver, and the organization. And that is to ask, what is it you most desire? What is it that is most important to you? Because if I'm going to talk to Mark and I'm in the development world, the fact that you have a resource is what's important to me. But I need to understand and want to understand what's the passion behind that resource. Is it dollars? Is it time? Is it energy? That's what reduces some of that complexity. Because when you understand what somebody's passionate about or what somebody's connected to or what somebody's transacting, right, then I can be a better steward of your dollars and you can be a better donor, if you will. And that speaks back to this idea. I used to go to events, and Phyllis, we've been there. We've talked about this. We've seen it. Mark, you've seen it. And that is, there's the auction. And there's always those one or two people that are just daddy and sister and mama warbucks that just flow in cash out left and right. And I remember there's conversations like, oh, he or she's just doing that to show off, or oh, they're the big money, and blah blah blah. And there was actually judgment. And I'll admit, I used to be one of those people who's like, man, why are they really doing it? And then I just realized, and Phyllis, you brought this point home. Who cares? Who cares? That's their why. That's their story to carry into whatever that organization is. And if it's pride that's driving them, but they're using that and it's doing good, then that's a beautiful thing. And I don't have any right to judge that. And so I love what you brought up, Phyllis, is like, what is the expectation? What are they seeking from this experience? Because those hidden expectations not only can be a roadblock, but also prevent somebody from being engaged.
I'd love to go back to something that hit me, Phyllis, that you had said about research. And so just real quickly, while we're on this, I went back and I just wanted to know what donations to ALS have done over the last 40 years. Discovery of the genetic causes of ALS, new treatments in 95, 2017, 2023, 500 research projects that are currently in the go, and happening right now, more public awareness. So interesting. Just asking for more information has made me think about that. So that simplified something just during this show for me. So I just wanted to say I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The other thing I want to point out that's kind of bubbling up for me as we're talking about this, and I think it's new for most people when you're talking about individuals. And we always think we know what's best for somebody else. I alluded to it a little bit earlier. But I think too, for our listeners who are thinking about getting engaged, I don't care where, after school, whatever, however you're thinking about getting engaged, to just please take a minute to ask questions. If you're sitting in a room working with seniors, ask questions. If you're thinking about helping somebody who needs house repairs or a car repair, ask questions. Not so you change your mind, but so you better understand what to do, what the person wants, and what the person needs. And that may be drastically different than what you think, and it doesn't make it wrong. I always say, when people tell you what they need, believe them. It may not make sense to you, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't believe them. It might not align with your system. It doesn't mean you shouldn't believe them.
Totally. Well, I had a manager many, 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 many years ago who, maybe he stole it partially from the, movie Glenn Ross, where it's ABC instead of always be closing. He changed it to always be curious. And he had, ABC's easy, but, he had genuinely in front of curious. Always be genuinely curious. And I think that that's an important piece to what you're saying is ask questions, but out of genuine curiosity of wanting to learn more.
Yeah.
Not to have
So
an
that you
answer
can
at the end of it.
Yeah.
Phil, in this goes to, I think it's tied to on the heels of what you just said. I know that over the years, in my conversations with giving, with large philanthropic dollars, I've seen a correlation between the quantity of money given and the sense of control and entitlement to decide what happens to that money. Said another way, because I made that really complex, the more money you give, the more expectation of control that person or group or organization is going to have. And so when I think about complexity, it seems to be sometimes that the smaller the dollar, it's like, it's pretty easy. I give $50 here. Just the other day, my buddy Eric Henderson was riding in Bike MS. I forgot that he was riding. I saw it come up on his feed. Boom. I knocked out $50 to the MS Society. It was easy, right? If you give money, advice, or support, or an opportunity, do you have the right to tell the person what to do with it? That's my question.
Do you have the right to tell them what to do with it? No. I think you're offering it freely, right? Whether it's $50 or $50,000 or whatever the case may be. Back to Phyllis's thought around trust and believability. I think you have to, if someone's come to you for advice and you freely gave it to them, if they want to use that advice, great. And if they don't, well, that's fine too. Maybe you make the decision if they don't follow your advice, not to give it to them anymore. But that doesn't mean that you can demand that they follow it.
What about money though? I'm gonna donate $1 million to this charity. Should I have the right to say this is where I want it? Do this.
You can
I think
donate.
you could have influence.
Go ahead, Mark. I was going to say, I think you can, if you want to restrict it to a certain thing, sure. But I think I think where you're heading, Al, is there's a difference between having the right to say what is right or wrong about the usage of that money and expecting some kind of outcomes. And those conversations should happen well ahead of a gift. It's and maybe it doesn't really matter the gift size, but I think there's a difference between what you think and what is possible because of that gift. And I think it's perfectly okay to want at the end of every year some kind of something. Hey, what was different because I did that? What's different in your organization this year than last year because of something? And some of that I really do believe that we all have to be okay with. This is what we learned because we thought this and then we learned that. And so next year, this is what is going to happen. But it just depends. It's all relational, and I shouldn't say all. A lot of it is relational. And in this hypothetical where there's $1 million coming down on the table, I would hope that whoever is doing $1 million, somebody might say, I don't care. Don't worry about it. I trust you. Do what you're going to do. Great. Wonderful.
And with that, we will temporarily hit the pause button, step into the stall to bathe in the glory of something we haven't done in quite some time. The roll-up. That's right. This is where we throw down, get down, and roll down the real questions. Now, typically we would ask some stupid questions that were unrelated maybe to anything relative to life. They're not stupid. There's no stupid questions, right? But here, no more repose. Let's just get to it. If you had $10,000 to give away, would you rather change one person's life or make a small difference in 100 lives?
$10,000 to give away. Would you rather change one person's life or make a small difference in 100 lives? For those of you doing the math, that's 100 with $1,000. I mean, no. 100 with $100.
Gosh, that's a really good question.
I can't take credit for it. That's a Phyllis Martin question.
I guess asked all the time. It's a hard question. It's hard.
I think because it's $10,000, if it was a 1,000, I'm going to say I would change. I would one person.
Why?
Because of the ripple effect that could come from that. I think if it's 100 lives and 10,000, what is that? 1,000. That's what?
100 people.
$100 each?
100 bucks each. 100 people.
$100
or
each.
1,000 would be 100 lives.
Yeah, I think I don't know that I could make a meaningful difference with $100. I guess it depends on the audience that you're giving the $100 to. But I think for me, for $10,000, if I had $10,000 to give right now, I would give it to one person in need.
Phil, you get to go last since it was your question that you posed. I agree with Mark. There's a lot of different ways that I could easily touch 100 lives in other ways, I think. Not that I couldn't touch one life, but $10,000 is a lot of money. I would probably do one if I had $10,000 to give away. I would do one. Because I'm also conscious of the fact that I typically don't have the financial resources to do that. And so that would also feel different to me selfishly. Whereas touching 100 lives, I could do that. And I do that regularly with a smile, with a $10 here. The other night, I literally just bought a couple's dinner randomly at Chick-fil-A, not a big old dinner. Just a couple with some kids. And I don't know, maybe they weren't struggling, maybe they were, but I did that. So anyway, Phil?
I mean, just to be different, I'll spread it across.
No, don't be different.
No, you don't have to do that.
We don't do different just to be different. What would you do?
Well, it's hard, and it always depends on the situation, and I can see merit in $100 is very meaningful depending
You're
on what the
overthinking
situation
it.
Can be very meaningful just depending on the situation.
You're
I am
in the
more
stall.
likely, yeah. It's true. It's hard. I don't know. It really depends on the situation.
No,
it's hard.
No.
No.
I
cry bullshit.
Establish that it's
What?
hard.
I cry
But
bullshit.
You're not. That's crap. So
Thank you.
You get like us. You've
Pick
had time
an
to think
answer.
about it. Someone hands you $10,000. You have 5 seconds to make a decision. Go.
100. That's how I'm feeling today. 100.
Okay. That you even put in here.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, it's fine.
I still love you, Phil. All right.
Because it depends on how I'm feeling. We established that up front.
All right.
20 minutes ago.
Okay, here's the next question. Here we go. The last question in the stall. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. You are talking to a newly minted millionaire who happens to be your child or a very, very, very close loved one or friend. They have come to you and they say the following question: what's the one word of advice you would give me as I make a decision about how to do good with this money, how to give this money and help others? Whatever that money is, it's going to be. They're wealthy. So they're going to start their philanthropic journey, and they're going to start, more importantly, a journey of giving. Keeping in mind, it could be money, it could be time, it could be resources, but they're now very wealthy. So what's the one piece of advice that you're going to give them as a loved one to help them start their quote unquote giving journey?
I don't know if it's advice. It's more my routing number, bank ID.
There we go. That was good.
Because if it's my kid, if it's one of my kids, this is the bank.
Here's how you give back.
Here's how you give back, and give generously, and
Yes,
often.
give often and give generously.
That is bad. That could be a mic drop, and we just end the show and piss everybody
Yeah,
off.
we'll just with
right
that.
there. We should just stop.
No.
All right.
I think my piece of advice is, for me, especially in the beginning of giving, and you guys really brought it home for me in the beginning of the show. That's the only reason I'm able to answer this, is it needs to be from the heart. and
That's good.
make it meaningful, because you'll want to do more of it. That you guys really helped me in the beginning of the show with that. So I would say do it from the heart.
Awesome.
I'll go next, and then Phil, you can wrap up the stall before we get back into the show, or the other part of the show. My advice would be look within, ask a lot of questions about what most matters. And then when you find out what most matters that you care about, ask a lot of questions of the people and or organizations so that they are in alignment, right? Once people find out you are a person of means, the door knocks begin in a variety of different ways. We've heard all the nightmare stories for lottery winners and things like that. And so you'll get asked a lot of questions. And I think all giving starts from a place, start from a place of knowing what matters most so that you can make informed decisions. I would love to be wealthy enough to be in a point where I can just go ahead and drop 10K because I was at a charity event and I'd love to do that. That would be great. That would be awesome. But from the intentionality of making a difference in people's lives, to your points, you have to ask yourself what most matters so that you can make informed decisions, and then ask that of the organizations. That would be my decision. That would be my advice. Phyllis. So.
Yes. I would say a couple of things. One, think about what kind of capital you want to invest. How much of it do you want to be your social capital, your moral capital, intellectual capital, and financial capital? You have to start thinking about it a little bit differently if depending on what kind of good you want to do. And then the second thing I would say is you have to also take some time and think about, is it outright charity? I want to make sure people have food to eat. Hard stop. No questions asked. Or do you want something else to happen? Do you want more to happen? So do you want, the saying is, do you want to teach a man to fish? Do you want that? Do you want to invest in things like that? Or do you want to invest in something that's beyond that? Which is, I understand now that there's a whole system that surrounds this issue and I need that to change. And how can I use my philanthropy to change that system so it impacts people differently? All of those are part of the whole ecosystem. All of those are important. Not everybody wants to do all of it. But if if I had that kind of money, I would be asking myself those kinds of questions so that I was doing what was in my heart, what I really wanted to accomplish, and that I was helping in a way that was most meaningful. And I'd be asking a ton of questions and meeting all kinds of people, right? So I could hear from people we say we do this all the time. We say we want to impact lives, right? We say we want to do better, and then spend no time learning with the people that we want to help.
I think you just identified one of the reasons that giving is complex. People don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
They don't want to do the work. It's just easier to just give and to say, all right, I put it out the door. And I would say to that point, if you do that, then in that point, you don't get to say, well, I want the money to go here. If you're not going to put in the work, then that's okay. But that kind of loosens the grip on saying, well, why did that money go there? Or where did it go over there? Or I didn't, it's like, well, you got to kind of, there's the transaction, there's the action, and then there's the investment. And if you're going to invest, then you should ask those questions. That's good stuff. All right, we could probably do 2 hours on this show, and what we should do, what would be really cool is to find somebody out there in the world that's kind of struggled with maybe this, that was maybe has given, but anyway, for another show. All right. let's just bring this home. Mark, I'd love to start with you. You said something so powerful in the very beginning, which was also like a bummer, but understood. And that was, I feel guilty. I feel like haven't been enough. I feel like I'm not engaged with this, and, I'm not with a nonprofit. And there's that stress around, I haven't, done enough, whatever. Once we lifted you up, here's my question for you. And we can each ask each other a question. That's fine. But my question for you guys is, like, especially you, Mark, like, in this short period of time, if anything, what have you learned about why giving is complex? And how would you make life simpler for somebody else? Different from, hey, what we just did. Like, what have you learned, and how would you make it more simple and less complex for somebody else?
I think the thing that I've learned is that there's so many places that you, and what's been complex is there's so many places that you can give, so many people that need help. On an individual basis, it's unfortunately the person who's hungry at the street corner over, to people who don't have clothes, who people don't have shelter at night, to, people dealing with cancer, heart disease, or litany of other issues. And so I think the thing that I've learned is that I can't help everybody. And I think what I've learned in this show, quite honestly, is that I need to be two things. One, very thoughtful and wanting to engage with some different nonprofits that I have an interest in, and ask questions, even if I never give to them, just to learn more. And I think that that's something that I've learned just in this short 51 minutes that we've been hanging out.
And any advice to make it less complex for somebody else?
I probably just don't overthink it. Just be curious, ask questions, be willing to think that you don't do enough. I think what you both have enlightened for me today, is that giving isn't just associating with a nonprofit. And I think the advice is take stock of the things that you're doing.
That's great. Yeah.
So thank you both.
You're welcome. Mark, I don't know that you've closed the show in a while with a mic drop. We've had some recent mic drops that I've given, that Phil's given. So we're going to save you for last. You get to ask your question last.
Okay.
Phil, what question do you have, or what thought do you have to bring this home?
I don't know. I mean, I think the one thing that stands out to me, I think really going back to what you had asked, Mark, especially after you said, okay, well, Phil, here's what's happened with the ALS Foundation, or right since 1995, I think you said like some things in there. As hard as it is for me to say it, one of the things that I think has happened to me is I have just lost hope that anything will ever happen. And so I'm connecting that. You asked why I stopped giving, and I don't really think I understood the reason I stopped giving is because I actually have lost hope that in my lifetime, something will be different around ALS, even though there's been all of this amazing research. I guess it just seems to me that's just how I feel. So you asked, right? And it wasn't until, Mark, you said those things, which I'm sure I knew a little bit in the back of my head. It's not like the money was going to dust or something like that, but not enough, right? Like not enough over time. And I'm so glad there are people who do have hope still for that particular issue.
That is just something so powerful, Phil. And I think we need to understand the balance of giving ourselves grace. Despite not having a direct connection, like physically, to MS, it is what I have spent, ironically, probably the most time with, in depth with folks. There's so many reasons for people to just say, I give up. And there's so much hope, and there's so much light, and there's so many stories about not giving up. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so important to find your community. right? To find your community for the things that matter to you, so that when you are waning on hope, that hope can be recharged. And maybe that doesn't mean you give, but maybe it means you reconnect, which is in its own way an act of giving, just by simply reconnecting. Wow, thank you for sharing that. All right, Mark, I asked my question. Phil, just go ahead and liquefied our brains with more beauty of her soul, which, by the way, that is a hell of a beautiful soul within the one they call Phyllis Martin. Thank you.
I thank you.
If you knew, I hope you listening know the souls of the three of us, but also just what's behind all of these things. This show is anything but transactional, obviously. That's why you're still listening. But anyway, I was about to go ahead and shower love, but we don't need to anymore. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark,
So
over to you.
Mark, yeah.
I can ask a question, or I can I can share something that's front and center, and you both can. I don't know if there's an answer to it, but I have a written question. But I think I want to ask this: what is the value of one life impacted by your generosity?
I feel like if I've been able somewhere along the line to help one person, then I have carried my grain of sand.
Al?
You asking that question is part of the course correction that I've been trying to make in my life to realize that it's enough. So first, I want to say thank you. There's probably a cry coming here. I'm going to try to hold it off.
Oh, Lord. Mm-hmm.
Really? I just said your heart doused us, and now you're just putting flames on that, you mean...
Easy.
Ice lady.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to realize that the quantity is not the answer, and I'm beginning to get it, and so the value is when I stood next to that gentleman at the bar, and in that moment was what he apparently needed. That's enough, and I need to remember to own that, to live with that, and to appreciate it, and to carry it with me. And so the value of one life changed is enough. It doesn't need more. It doesn't need multiplicity. That is enough.
And that's why this is the complexity of toilet paper.
Did you say toilet paper?
Everything complicated. One big medieval mess.
I'm overthinking. I'm